Printing money is bad,
Hmm.
right? It's inflationary.
Hmm.
But borrowing printed money is insane.
But
The
that tax
chairman.
thing was big,
That
right?
was big.
That's a big thing that's going to affect a lot of people. And
And
we'll
I've
talk
heard
about
so many
that this
people
morning.
characterize this as a tax cut for the wealthy.
Well, yeah, because that's on the media, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
And
media.
it is what the media, the president calls it fake news.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't think it's as much fake news as it is the news that they choose to tell you. Doesn't mean it's fake. It just means,
Selective kind of.
yeah, selective more
Selective.
than anything
Right.
else. So we're not going to focus on this, but we're going to focus on that.
Right.
It doesn't make that any more true than this, right? It just means we're not going to look at this. We're going to focus on that. And so by determining what becomes the subject of news, then the news media has a power that just, well, it's almost unparalleled.
Sure, sure. So, but President Trump's idea, I guess, is fair to say that he uses that as a blessing, and so wants to get tax cuts, corporate rates down, so get things kind of rolling, get the GDP up, and everybody's happier, and
Well,
they'll vote for him again in 4 years, and
So the job of the central bank is to control inflation. And to the extent that government helps them control inflation, when they are the cause of inflation, right? So take the current central bank regime and the prior regime of President Obama. And he was my president, by the way. I didn't vote for him, and I didn't like his policies, but boy, he was my president, and I respected his office. That's something that seems to be lacking this time.
You think?
I've
you think?
not seen anything like it. So, at any rate, that president decided that in order to control inflation, and he probably did this in consultation with his economic advisors, that he needed for the unemployment rate to be kept relatively high, and that he needed for taxes on corporations to be kept relatively high, and taxes on people to be kept relatively high. In this way, he could control the descent of the dollar or the value of the dollar. He could actually give it strength by taking away the purchasing power of citizens and of corporations, and also the productive power. So when the borders are porous and wide open and people can just stroll in and get a job, then they can mitigate wage increases, which would be a natural occurrence with sealed borders. The same thing, you only have a certain quantity of people, and these people are going to ask for more money to conduct their labor or to sell their goods. So this president, the prior president, President Obama, chose to regulate this on the demand side. So by mitigating or dampening demand for higher wages or demand for manufacturing, he kept inflation in check. And these artificial governors that are placed on the economy in order to regulate inflation, that's what regulation is all about. Maynard Keynes talked about it, John Maynard Keynes, where if the government were to refrain from regulation, then the worthlessness of money would soon be revealed. So by taking away your portion of your wages and a portion of your profits, and by making you have to compete with folks that have an uneven advantage, they force down your wages, they force down your value. And that was the technique of that president. Then this president comes along and says, wait a minute, I see what's wrong with this economy. We have all these artificial governors regulating and preventing economic growth. So I'm going to remove the governors. And the people that he refuses to listen to, the economist, would be screaming at him. But if you do, you're going to lessen the value of the dollar. If you refrain from regulation, then the worthlessness of money will soon be revealed. I've often asked, if in fact money has no substance, and if in fact you can simply create it at will, why does the government need our money at all? Why doesn't it simply create all the money that it needs to conduct its affairs? And it is that inflation answer. That's why they don't do it. So
Yeah. That's back to your original argument
Right.
about, I mean, why borrow money
why
when
borrow
you can just
money when
create
you
it?
just create it?
Yeah.
This president decided, well, we would be better off as a nation if I remove the governors the restrictors that are keeping our economy in check, without regard to the inflation it may or may not cause. I don't know how much of a mistake that'll turn out to be, but I do know that while it's happening, it'll feel good. And I know McChesney Martin, a previous chairman of the Fed, famously said that the Fed's job is to take the punch bowl away from the party just when it's getting fun. And in this case, we haven't had a punch bowl for so long that, this president's out there spiking the punch, and it's going to feel really good. We're all going to be just zooming and booming in terms of wages and money to spend and so forth. This idea, again, I guess where we started, that this is a tax cut for the wealthy. I don't know if maybe they're reading a different bill from the one that I'm reading, but as I understand it here, state and local taxes are limited to $10,000, a deduction.
That you can write off.
That you can deduct.
Right.
Now, I know most people I know pay less than $10,000 in property taxes. And here in the state of Texas, there's no income tax, right?
Right.
No local tax. There's just property tax. So if your property taxes are less than $10,000 and your individual deduction doubled, went from $12,000 to $24,000, you're seeing an enormous tax cut. But let's say
regardless of whatever your adjusted gross income is.
Correct.
Okay.
And forget the tax rate.
Okay.
I get that they cut the tax rate on the ultra wealthy from 39
to
to
37,
37,
right. Yeah.
a tiny tax cut when you offset it against. So I'm looking at one of those New York penthouses in the Pencil Building in Manhattan. $70 million for this penthouse. $70 million, Patrick. What do you think the property taxes a year on that place is?
Oh, I don't
Not
know.
10,000.
No.
And who do you think's living there? The rich and the ultra rich. And no matter what they're reporting as income, only 10,000 of it is deductible to them, both in state and local taxes.
Last year, was there a cap at all?
No.
Whoa.
So if they were paying
There was no cap.
$7 million a year
They would write
in
that off.
interest, they could write the entire thing off.
Oh, the rich guys could not be happy with Donald right now.
No, this is a tax. The tax increase on these wealthy folks has got to be the biggest one in history when you stop looking at the marginal rate and look at what they're no longer allowed to deduct. And as a general rule, and I do know some rich folks, I will call them very wealthy, and $10,000 to them is a joke. I mean, houses around Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, $4 and $5 million houses are yielding $70, $80, $90,000 a year in property taxes. And those rich folks,
They're not going to be able to write that off anymore.
10,000.
Yeah, 10,000, which is huge.
What a tax increase for those people.
Yeah.
Because now you've just increased the amount of money that they have to pay taxes on. So imagine the wealthy guy before who's paying himself $10 million a year, but he's paying $7 million in interest on loans for properties that he owns that are gaining value each year, and taxes, property taxes on all of that, which now suddenly is no longer deductible. That means now his adjusted gross income isn't cut by 70% or 80% as it was last year, where he could deduct all of his interest, all of his property taxes. Now he's limited in both to what most of American property owners, most of us, pay
It would be
$10,000.
great to hear President Obama just say what you just said and to let people know.
President Trump?
I mean, President Trump.
I'd love to
Excuse
hear
me.
President Obama.
I was
admit
going
it,
to President
too.
Obama say that.
But,
Yeah.
neither will.
Yeah.
I don't know. I will say that, this president uses his own bypass the media method, right? What most
Twitter
people,
thing, yeah.
Twitter. He tweets. And it's whether or not the media chooses to report it. What I'm getting at is, even if the president decides, I'm going to hold a press conference in the White House tomorrow, and I'm going to tell America what Andy just said, that the very rich people
Are really
who
getting hammered.
are really getting
Yeah.
hammered with this tax. Nobody's going to
Nobody's
report
gonna
that.
report it, yeah.
So, by going around the media and taking his message right to the people, hopefully we'll get it. But
Which is the reason, I guess, that he's so criticized for the tweets.
Yes.
They keep
we
trying
can't
to
have
demean
you.
the
No,
tweet.
we
Yeah.
want to filter
Yeah.
what you're saying and tell the American people what you meant. We don't want them to just hear you say it. Yeah.
And this tax thing is going to be around for a long time. This is the last time they had this big of a deal was
Tefra.
1980.
No, I know.
No?
I would say that this is incomparable to any
Really?
ever, because what it did this time, the revenue increase to the federal government is going to be enormous. Either that or the rich people, the very wealthy among us, they have to move. I mean, there's really no other way for them to avoid the tax. In the past, they could simply buy a bigger house, buy another property.
So this tax cut is going to bring more revenue in?
Yes.
Really?
Mountains of revenue.
Because there'll be more corporations, even though they're paying less, there's going to be more business, more guys will open more taco stands, whatever they do.
Well,
right, stuff like that.
We are
Right?
a booming nation. Believe this or not, right? When I said it earlier in the year, that there's 1,600 new millionaires created every day
Is that right?
in the United States. 1,600. So, millionaire is not a billionaire, but the volume of taxes paid by the ultra rich and the volume of their deductions. So you look at an ultra rich guy's tax return, and those first two deductions, interest and local and state taxes, they're probably the number one shield or shelter from taxes.
So, and plus, you've taught us that the amount of corporate tax that comes in is a small percentage compared to.
That's right.
Right. It's what,
It's the
20% or
individual-
something like that?
It's the individual income tax.
That's where all the
and
money-
the payroll tax is where the money comes in. So I think when I tracked it this year, I think we were in September when we were talking about it. It wasn't yet a plan. We were talking about the idea of a tax cut. It was corporations, I think, where at the time had paid in $200 billion.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was around in there.
It was around $200 billion, where individuals had already paid in $1.4 trillion in individual income tax and payroll tax. So when we raise corporate tax rates very high and we drive our corporations offshore, like, why would you stay in the United States and pay 39% when you can do your business in Ireland and mail your goods to the
12%,
United States and pay 12%? There's no reason. So corporations were packing up their shops and moving because we have no tariffs, and that's the...
And the president ran on this.
Sure he did.
Yeah, yeah.
This is why I supported him day one.
Yeah.
Okay, would I have loved to have a better messenger? You bet. Yeah, the guy is a flawed messenger. No, I won't argue with anyone on that point.
Sure.
But the message is what's important to me. And what was wrong with this nation's economy was so simple to fix. If it could have been a better messenger, I would have preferred it, as long as he had the same message, which was the idea that the working people of this country should pay for the operation of this country. So all of the profits to the foreign corporations, Mitsubishi, and name your foreign corporation that sells their goods in the U.S., takes all of their profit home to their home country and pays taxes over there. That's why China has a $5 trillion infrastructure program. That's why South Korea has the best infrastructure for the internet in the world. And our infrastructure, 40 years old and 20% of
Falling
it's
apart.
subservient.
Yeah.
So that reason, because there's not enough revenue to our government, because we've diverted our tax revenue to other nations. If we had a strong protective tariff, and John McCain, I think, revealed himself when he accused President Trump of being a nationalist. Like, that's the worst thing you can be.
Yeah.
The guy who thinks, this nation is superior to every other and Americans are superior to everyone else. You might as well be a racist because, that's what you're exhibiting. The idea that you're going to favor America and favor American workers over anyone else in the world. Why, that's not a very globalist notion at all, is it?